Morning everybody, or afternoon. I'm back today with some more questions, and today's questions are going to be for George Osborne. Just in case anybody doesn't know, George Osborne is the Chancellor of the UK Parliament. I'm going to get straight on. So, first of all, George, real name Gideon Oliver Osborne. There's no George in there, and I don't need that question answering because I know why you did that. It was so that you could be a bit more approachable with the British public. The first question I've got for you this morning is, what's 7 times 8? Now, I know that you avoided answering this question when a small child asked you what 7 times 8 was, because I'm assuming you didn't know the answer. And I would guess that's something to do with the fact that you don't have any kind of mathematical qualification whatsoever. And your degree that you got from Oxford is actually a 2-1 in history. So it's quite interesting, which obviously led me on to wondering how it was you got the job of Chancellor. Now, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not slating you for that. The fact is, my maths is as good as my Russian. But the difference being is that I'm not the Chancellor and you are. So, how exactly did you end up in that job? I think quite a lot of people in Britain would probably want to know the answer to that, given that you are apparently responsible for making the financial decisions that we all have to live under. And, you know, having had a look at the rest of your history, it's quite obvious that your maths is pretty shocking, given some of the taxpayers' money that you have swindled. I'll get onto that in a moment. But first of all, I'd like to cover a little bit of your personal history, because it will kind of make people wonder even more why you needed the taxpayers' money to do what you did. Because George Osborne, you are the heir apparent, and your official title is actually Baron Osborne. And you're also the 4th cousin of the Queen. And from what I found out, it appears that you have, at minimum, a net worth of £4 million. So what's quite surprising to me is that you needed £56,193 for out of the public purse. Oh, and on top of that, sorry, £47 worth that you claimed for DVDs of yourself, basically, which apparently was an unintended and minor breach of the rules that you are supposed to be covered by or follow as an MP and a member of the cabinet. On that note, actually, £47, minor breach. Some would say, yeah, it's a minor breach, you know, whatever. But what I would like to know, if that's the case, how many people exactly were imprisoned for stealing a packet of bubblegum during the riots in London a couple of years ago? I'd like the answer to that. Second of all, as the Baron Osborne, you also, an heir apparent, you also inherited part of your family business, which is called Osborne Brown. And for anybody that doesn't know who Osborne Brown are, they are a home furnishing company, wallpapers, soft furnishings, etc. You own half of that company, and your business partner is Mr. Brown. Something that's quite interesting about Mr. Brown is he is also the chairman of one of the companies that is fracking Britain. Yeah, I said fracking Britain. And you gave the frackers of Britain a huge tax break. Why exactly did you do that? Moving on. As now part of your family this is another quite interesting thing here. One of your spawn is called Liberty. Now, I find that quite interesting in itself. And what I wanted to know about Liberty was, did you call your child Liberty as a joke? Or did you call your child Liberty because before long, that child will be the only person in Britain with any liberty? I think that's a fair question. You also attended the Bilderberg group meetings, or Bilderberg, which actually is probably a slightly slip of the tongue there, but I think probably quite Freudian, between 2006 and 2009, before you actually were the Chancellor. That's quite an interesting fact about you, because it's quite well known to a fair amount of people what the Bilderberg meetings are actually about. And I'd be quite interested to know if your attendance at the Bilderberg meetings was anything to do with you managing to score a job that is quite clearly well above and beyond your league. You know, given that at the time, your best friend, who's been your best friend since you were a small child, almost like family, I would say, is Nathaniel Rothschild. And I just wondered how your relationship is with Nathaniel now, and whether you have managed to patch up your relationship after you tried to extort £50,000 out of his friends. I'm guessing you must be friends again now, because it's obvious to any of us that are in the know that the Rothschilds are one of the main families that actually run the world. And there's no way that you would be in the position you're in, given that you've got no qualifications, given that you're a massive dumbass, that you would still be there. So I'm assuming one of two things. You either know something that keeps you safe, or he's forgiven you for being the little weaselly rat cunt face that you are. That would probably be quite an interesting one to know. Now back onto this whole money thing, and given that you're apparently worth about £4 million, why exactly did you feel the need to extort £55,000 out of the public purse when you decided to do what many other MPs, I've got to admit, have done? It's not exclusive to you. Flipping your second home that you're entitled to on expenses. You made a serious amount of money out of that. And I just wondered if you have any intention of paying back the £55,000 that you extorted from the British taxpayer in order to make even more money on top of your huge wealth already. I would think that the people of this country that work their fucking arses off to slave for you and your little group of chums at the Bullingdon Boys Club, yeah, we know about that too. I just wonder how they'd feel about you having spent their money on hookers, houses, and the other £1,195 that you screwed out of their purse to pay your mortgage. I think they'd all want to know the answer to that. Next of all, Natalie Rowe. Now, it seems quite obvious that you're trying to keep this lady quiet. And for anybody who doesn't know who Natalie Rowe is, she's also known as Mistress Payne. She is the lady, the escort, who made it quite clear to Mr. Osborne while he was visiting her apartment back in the early 90s that she was an escort. She has written a book about Mr. Osborne, and funnily enough, just a few weeks before this book was due to be released, her house was raided on an anonymous tip-off by a member of the public. Now, their warrant claimed that this was a drugs raid. And I think it's quite obvious that this lady might have been set up. And she was actually told by a police officer at the time if you make a complaint, this is going to open up a whole can of worms. Now, I was just wondering, Mr. Osborne, or Baron Osborne, if you are one of the slimy worms inside that can. Because I'm not a betting woman, but I'd be more than willing to bet my entire life on the fact that you are. And how have you managed to keep her so quiet? Is it through threats? Right. I don't really know what else I can say about this blood-sucking scumbag. Other than a little piece of advice that I'm going to give to you personally. Which is, it's quite obvious that you are a living, breathing mistake. And I would bet that you were a mistake before you could even walk. Now, I think the biggest mistake that you've made is the fact that you have massively underestimated the people that you've targeted. You've targeted the poor and the working class people of this country. And the reason that's a massive mistake is because the poor and the working class, who make up the majority of this country, have got nothing to lose when it comes to taking you fucktards down. We've got nothing to lose. And if you're not scared of people who've got nothing to lose, then you're a bigger fucking dick than I ever could have possibly imagined you were.